I have prepared for myself. Each of the cheat sheet, like one knowledge area, like I mentioned, has different tasks, right? Like every task, so there is a grid that I have made for myself. If chance permits, I'll put it up on Telegram. All the cheat sheets that I prepared for myself. There is a task like first knowledge area, business analysis, planning, and monitoring has 5 tasks, right? And like every task has an overview of the task. There is a purpose of the task. There are elements in the task as a part of the task. There is a guideline and tool, guidelines or tools. There are techniques. There are stakeholders, and there are inputs and outputs. Okay, so these are like it's not connected essentially, but these are different dimensions of looking at a task. Okay, so far so good, Shipra. Just checking the pulse if I'm going. The session is being headed in the right direction.
Yes, Vineet, it's fine with me. Anyone else has anything to add? No, I guess Vineet, please go ahead.
Okay, okay. So, overview and so when you take each of the tasks, right, like make a grid of each of it. I can probably make the profile picture here so that people can know what I was referring to. Um, make a grid. Okay, let me make this and then you can continue. I couldn't cover whole of the content, but this is just a brief of how what I'm trying to talk about. Okay, can you see the screen, Shipra?
Yes,
So I was
yes,
referring
Vineet.
to grid something like this, where uh, this one pager talks essentially about one knowledge area. There is a task, there is overview and purpose in the first grid. The task talks about like there is an overview of the task, right? Like when you select and create a methodology, like whether it is going to be a predictive approach or adaptive approach or agile approach, is essentially decided as a part of planning business analysis activity. Okay, and then there is a define activities and tasks also as a part of the purpose of the task. Okay, so I've tried filtering the content and putting it here so that everything is at a glance. Okay, one thing which I think I've mentioned or not, but business analyst essentially deals with the scope of the document. What is that work to be done in a project is taken care by the business analyst. Usually, the time component, the cost component, the quality component, the communications, resource management, procurement, all those things are usually managed by the project manager. Okay, so when you look at a project holistically, like initiating, when you start a project to initiate it, when there is a planning phase, there is a executing phase, then you control, like you monitor and control, and you close the project. So this is the project management life cycle. BA does travel in this project management life cycle. These are three different cycles we're talking about. Project management life cycle is different from requirement life cycle, traveling in a requirement life cycle. So BA usually travels with requirement life cycle rather than a project management life cycle. Okay, so you're essentially trying to break down the scope. Okay, like there is a work to be done. Say you have to build an application in a software world, or for instance you are coming from a construction industry. You have to build a building, right? So you have 1 year time, you have say 1 crore INR to build. uh, there are quality metrics also defined, like you have to go by a certain level of grading, and so you have certain constraints and you start the work, right? So scope is basically you break it down. Okay, in the first 2 months, probably if it's a building, like probably I'll put a basement in the first 1 month. Second month, I'll try to put the slab, right? You break it down and you follow that approach. So that's essentially a predictive way of doing things. Usually nothing changes unless there is a threat to the original intent, like original solution. You don't tend to change things. in a predictive approach. In an agile world, you are welcoming change every day. You um, elaborate and you progress. Progressive elaboration is something which agile relies on, and uh, every day we are trying to refine our requirements and come up with an optimal solution. Okay, so that's the difference. And again, like I'm going into details of the exam prep, but four stages that I spoke about. First stage, try to make cheat sheets of one pager of each of the knowledge areas. Also make cheat sheets about elements, one pager for all the elements, right? I'll share all the material on the Telegram group. One pager for inputs and outputs, one pager for techniques if possible. Like I tried making it. It's really tough to summarize a technique. Okay, but whatever bare minimum, right? Like what does this particular technique talk about, right? So that's one. Um, I have also made, there is if you have heard about core concept model, there is a business analysis core concept model, BACCM. So that chart is also important. I've seen some 3 to 4 questions out of 120 coming just from that one page. Okay, so try to make it easier if you want to clear the exam. These are small things which you can, just one pager, right? And there are competencies. I was seeing at least 3 to 4 questions from competencies. So if you are just thorough with BACCM diagram. Okay, so there is when I say diagram, like there are 6 things which are interfabricated: need, change, solution, context, value, stakeholders, and all the 6 are some or the other way related to each other. It all starts with a need, we all know that, and then what needs to be changed to reach a solution, right? So this is the first facet of it. And who are we interacting with to get this change done as stakeholders? What kind of value are we deriving by doing this is discussed in value. And the context, right? Context is the business environment. We are all operating in a organizational environment which is a part of a business environment, that's industry, right? So we can't go outside the industry, or what's not being practiced in the industry, we can't reinvent the wheel. So context is also really important. When we have lesser time, we'll have to take it differently. When we have a greater amount of time, probably we can take certain risks, right? So the risk appetite is risks and issues essentially depend on the context. Okay, so it may be wise to consider these two pages, because I have seen some 7 to 8 questions just from these two. One competencies, 3 to 4 questions, two BACC model. Okay, um, now after the first 15-day cycle, you land with cheat sheets, one pager each for each of the knowledge areas, and one pager each for inputs and outputs. One page, elements one page, inputs and out, like different techniques one page. So I'll try to post that like I mentioned. Probably you may not understand what you have written. Okay, so you're just trying to filter the content and write it there. Okay, so this is all from a memorization standpoint. Probably it's not making meaning out of it, because we usually have a temptation to apply our practical experience and relate it when we read. Okay, so in that temptation, I wasted some 3 to 4 months. And then I realized, okay, clearing the exam is more important than me applying my logic and my practical knowledge on this. So I have faded that away, and I've taken this approach just to clear that exam. If you have a different way of learning things, please do go ahead and absorb the content, digest it, and then give the exam. That's also not bad. But if you have a shorter time, probably you can consider taking this approach. Okay, so at the end of first 15 days, you have cheat sheets, probably say 12 of them. 6 is straight knowledge area, 6 is at a all the elements in one page, and that way, right? In the second phase of your preparation, try to then memorize. Okay, so first things first, every day morning, first thing I set aside, initially it used to take 15 minutes, and eventually I was just taking 5 to 7 minutes to for a brain dump. Okay, when I say a brain dump, I was including all the tasks under each knowledge area. Okay, like first of all, I need to memorize say 49 tasks, right? Like first task, BAPM has 5. Okay, second, illustration and collaboration has 5. Our requirement lifecycle management 5. Strategy analysis has 4 tasks. RATD has 6 tasks, and solution evaluation has 5. So okay, so I think the total is 50, not 49. It's 50. Uh, 50 tasks spread across. I'm just counting. Okay, 3, 15, 20, 25, 30. Okay, sorry, it's 30 tasks. I'm sorry. So techniques is 50. So it is 30 tasks spread across 6 knowledge areas. Each roughly has a 5. So try writing down the task names exactly. One tricky thing in the exam is uh, we often use different words when we in a practical sense when I'm talking. Instead of approach, probably I may say a path, okay, or a methodology. Okay, so I can use different words, but try to take those as is. If it is an approach, the plan business analysis approach, it is plan business analysis approach. Okay, try to remember it exactly the way it was cited in Bebok. If you have ever got a chance to read a insurance contract, uh, the terms are defined. Each of the terms are defined. Policy holder, who is a policy holder, who is an insurer, who is an insurance company. Okay, so these are all defined. What is the responsibility of an insurance company in the case of a claim, right? What is a claim? Okay, so each of the term is defined. Probably we have uh, different meanings around it, but for the purpose of that contract, you have to go by that definition only, nothing else. So same way, try to treat Babok as a Bible and define those terms. Uh, Again, please don't mix up practical experience to what's expected out of the exam. Look at it as just clearing the exam, and later on you will connect the dots, and you'll definitely find a meaning when you start doing things. When I started applying whatever I've learned, a few of the techniques, not all, I did try getting a meaning out of it. Okay, there it's a look at it as a high level thing. Like 2 3 years down the line is when I realized, okay, this is what I've studied, this is what they were asking me to do, now it makes sense. Okay, you will find a meaning there, but to reach there you need to know what it is first. So memorization is the mother of is the start point for all of this. Okay, so write down all the tasks under each of the knowledge areas like BAPM, plan business analysis approach, plan stakeholder engagement approach, plan business analysis governance, plan business analysis information management, identify performance improvements. These are the five. So yeah, you have something to say?
ఈ క్యాష్ నీ దగ్గర ఉండేది అదే ప్రాబ్లమ్ మేనేజ్ ప్రాపర్లీ అండ్ బిహేవ్ ప్రాపర్లీ మెచ్యూర్గా రెస్పాన్సిబుల్.
Uh, Karthik, please go on.
Yeah, okay.
Yep, carry on, Vinita.
Right, right. Okay, so try writing down so that you're just getting familiar with the names. Be very, very mindful of the names exactly like I mentioned. Approach is an approach. Okay, information management is information management. So try not replacing stakeholder management with stakeholder engagement. If it is stakeholder engagement, keep it as or try to remember it as engagement only than management. Okay, to me it was initially sounding the same. Okay, how is management different from engagement? I'm trying when I'm engaging, basically I'm managing them. Okay, so this is what I have done. I think that was a mistake, and then later on I've realized, okay, try taking it as is, because they play with words. Okay, that's the first step. Every day morning, set aside 5 minutes. Write down all the knowledge areas and the tasks. That's one. Okay. Second, I'm talking about the second phase of the prep strategy. Now you have all the cheat sheets. Go back to those cheat sheets and try to write all the elements if possible end to end. Okay, so across, I don't think I have it handy, but every knowledge area has, sorry, every task has certain elements. Like first task, like plan business analysis approach, has some elements like around six elements there. Whether it's going to be a predictive or adaptive or agile approach, Um, Formality, I think the formality and level of details of the business analysis deliverables, like you have to essentially know to what extent are you trying to fragment it, right? Like if there is always a work, like if you want to subdivide, you can always keep doing PhD in it. But what is that thing company is trying to achieve by welcoming this change? Okay, so understanding that level of detail is very, very important, and that reflects directly on your deliverables. Okay, and then identify and try to work. So work breakdown is something that comes as one of the elements in the first task. Okay, there is a big quantum of work to be done, and then you try to make it epics. In like in a real life world, we term it as epics, but I haven't come across the word epic here because that's an agile term. Work breakdown, right? Like you break down the work to be done into different fragments. Like essentially take this exam prep as a work. Clear CBAP or pass CBAP exam is one work to be done. It's a project, and we are trying to divide that project into four different phases. First phase, we have made some cheat sheets for ourselves. Okay, and then second phase, we are trying to grasp the content. Okay, third phase, you will start giving the exams. Like I'm sure you may not be very comfortable. Probably you end up at 50% or 40% of out of 100 if you consider taking or buying some exams from any of the open sources. Udemy has some, say, seven practice exams for a particular dollar amount, or probably you can buy it from Watermark Learning. There are different bodies who designed exams. So once you give the exam, you get a feel of, okay, we have prepared so much, two cycles. In the second cycle, essentially, you're trying to memorize the most essential things of the knowledge areas and the tasks. Okay, like I mentioned, every day morning, like I used to write those, the tasks under each of the knowledge area. I used to start writing the elements also. Okay, probably I did not remember exact name, but when used to compare it with the original, like reference to my original cheat sheet, I find the delta. So basically, you are correcting yourself, okay, and you are refining yourself in those 15 days. You are trying to refine yourself by trying to memorize and dump it, and then go back and refer. Okay, where is the delta? What exactly was the word used there, and what is that I have used? Okay, so that's essentially you're doing in the next 15 days. Read those cheat sheets time and again, and at that point in time, maybe if you're comfortable with the cheat sheets, then go to Babok. Okay, like now that you have a understanding of what is exactly defined in a task, what are the elements, okay, and what are the guidelines and tools, and there is something called as guidance as well. Okay, guideline is different from guidance. Okay, for instance, plan business analysis approach, guideline or a tool is business analysis performance assessment. Okay, so when do you do an assessment? Like when you already implement something, or even before planning, you do an assessment. Like you go back to employees who are working on the system, you take feedback, and that feedback is an assessment, right? So it's an assessment tool that's essentially termed as business analysis performance assessment. And then there is another guideline called stakeholder engagement approach, right? So you are interacting with stakeholders, and that's considered as a guideline, not a guidance. Okay, so guidance is something different. Like your business policies is guidance. Your methodologies and framework that is defined at an organizational level is guidance. Expert judgment is guidance. So try to identify the difference, fine line between the guideline and the guidance that's narrated in the book. Okay, and then there are techniques. It's really tough to memorize what technique falls under what task. Okay, so like first technique, say, has like planned business analysis approach, right? So it has, say, brainstorming. It also talks about business cases, decision analysis. There are some estimation techniques also that's involved, financial analysis. So there are different techniques. So I'm not saying memorize all of it. there would be questions that expect some questions there, but it's really tough. You are just overwhelming yourself. Okay, the first task, plan business analysis approach itself has 15 techniques. If you can see that on my home screen, um, it has 15 techniques, and it's really tough to memorize all the techniques. So what I have done was try to take a commonality out of all these techniques. If you look at the whole sheet at a glance, now that you have everything at once before you, I'm seeing, okay, in at a knowledge area level, right, at a plan business analysis planning and monitoring level, there are 5 tasks, and out of those 5 tasks, what are the commonalities? Okay, brainstorming. I have seen brainstorming across all the 5 tasks. Now, if there is a question about what technique is used and so, and it's scenario based questions, right? Like when you look at a question, you get a feel of what knowledge area at least they're talking about, right? So, senior BA or a junior BA is involved in planning activities and is collaborating with stakeholders. What would be a technique that you would recommend to that business analyst? Okay, and there are options. For instance, they talk about interviews, they talk about brainstorming, or it's a mix of everything, right? Brainstorming, comma interviews. Is the first option. Second option is brainstorming. Third option is interviewing. Fifth option is none of the above, right? So now you need to know whether interviews is something which is used across, like brainstorming is for sure there, but you also need to remember, is interviews one of the technique used across all the tasks? Okay, so like it's a back and forth thing. Okay, so it never so happens that you memorize everything and then go sit for the exam, give the exam. That's the reason after a month of starting the prep, you can give the exam, you get a feel of the questions. Probably it's not a bad idea to take it in the first after the first cycle also. 16th day you can take an exam, but by then I'm not sure how much memory you will have. So as and when you feel that the cheat sheets are like, you absorb those cheat sheets, try to get a feel of one exam so that you know what is expected from an exam. You may feel like I was feeling very dumb. Uh, I reached nowhere, and what kind of questioning is coming? I was feeling overwhelmed, but it's okay to feel that way. You will get there. You are not very far. That much I can say. When you feel overwhelmed, just break it down, right? Like, okay, one particular question you have answered wrong. You should know why the right answer is right and why the wrong answer is wrong. That's really really important. If you do one exam completely and thoroughly, um, you get more confidence. Okay, so it killed some 2 3 days of time, but one exam, 120 questions, I have gone back and forth each question why the right answer is right. I've spent some quality time going back to Babok and seeing, okay, how well is this described. Like, I need a logic, right? If something is right and I have chosen some other answer, why is this right, why is this wrong? And I used to convince myself reading at Babok, okay, I was assuming this, but this is what is given. Okay, forget what is being practiced there, but just take it as it comes, because Babok is our Bible only for the purpose of this exam. Okay, then techniques I've discussed. Then there is stakeholders, right? Like, again, it's relatively easier than techniques. So try to take a commonality out of all the tasks of each of the knowledge area. Okay, it's also not a bad idea to give some mental coding, right? Right. So domain subject matter expert. So there are some 7 or 9 roles, 7 roles, I think. A domain subject matter expert, project manager, sponsor, regulator, supplier, customer, end user. These are the 7 roles that I have seen, and you can take a commonality out of those roles, like who works on at a knowledge area level. Don't try to remember at a task level. At a knowledge area level, are the 7 roles needed in the first task? Plan business analysis approach. When you're planning, think logically. Like, is a domain subject matter SME needed? Why? You're doing brainstorming and you're doing interviews. Yes, as a domain SME is needed. Is a project manager needed? Yes, it is a planning phase. You need a PM. Is a sponsor needed? Yes, you would need, because someone has to sponsor and budget the whole project and the program. Okay, is a regulator needed? Yes, it is needed. A regulator can be an internal regulator or an external regulator. So always try to when you go back to Babok at that point in time, try to see like regulated to me, like when I was in financial services domain, to me, like when I was working with a bank, a regulator is RBI, or federal government of Canada, like whoever I work with, right? And insurance world, say in India, it was IIDI. Okay, so it's essentially not the external regulator only. An internal auditor also can be a regulator. Okay, so that fine line I've missed while answering the questions. I thought regulator is an external body. This is an internal meeting, and why would I invite a regulator here? Okay, so assumptions is something which probably can lead to a wrong answer there. So these are the four stakeholders who are involved in a plan business analysis approach model. Okay, who are the three delta who are not included in the in the first task is supplier, customer, end user. Now I had a question for myself, right? Like I didn't do a group study, so uh, a customer is not involved, and without assessing, like for instance, you go to a customer to assess the needs, right? Like, okay, what is that customer is expecting, what is that end user is expecting? Based on that only I try to customize my solution. I can't give whatever I have or whatever I can do, right? You should essentially work towards something that is wanted by the market, wanted by the customer or the end user. So why are they not involved? Okay, this is the question that I had. That is essentially done in the second task, that's plan stakeholder engagement. Okay, so these three roles are a part of stakeholders, and they need not be involved in a planning activity. Okay, planning is an internal thing, and when they say regulator, usually it is the internal regulator. um, it Some companies also do this. They go and take feedback before designing a product. They take feedback and views from the regulator. If there is an external regulator, see, we are trying to come up with a product like this, is it okay in regulated markets? I'm relating this to a regulated market. There are non-regulated, like software world is not regulated by anyone. But if you take some regulated products, right, like an insurance product or a banking product, it may be wise to go back when, especially when you're doing some product innovation, you try to come up with some new designs and features. Like I personally was working on, say, air ambulance coverage, right? So I didn't know how much premium to charge. Now I go back to the regulator. I want to add this as a feature in one of my upcoming products. How much would be the premium? Like I have seen markets, like there are advanced markets, right? Like the in insurance world, like India was standing somewhere, US or Canada was standing somewhere, Middle East market was traveling somewhere. So there is a product innovation happening in different parts of the world. I take some data for the last 10 years and 20 years. How many instances did people use air ambulance for airlifting, right? So take those instances, average cost of each of the incidents, and then I come up with a premium. Now I go back to the regulator and justify all this. See, I've gone back 10 years of data, actual data, and I have come up with okay, an average ticket size is say 5 lakh rupees, or say now the costs have increased with inflation, it is 10 lakh rupees. And I'm expecting out of every 100 policies that I sell, one person probably will come up with air ambulance coverage. Okay, so say like 100 with the 100 policies sold, I learn so much, and I will have to charge so much for getting this covered. So that's the kind of justification I give. We hear the take of the regulator, and then customize the product accordingly, because you have all the product ready, and once for all you file with the regulator, it doesn't make sense if they don't approve, right? It so happened in the past too. Companies do put in a lot of effort in R&D, research and development, and finally when it hits the market, there is a ban, right? So ban based on geographies, ban based on demography, it can happen through various reasons. Okay, so now, sorry, to deviate, I'll come back to the original intent of the topic. um, Inputs and outputs, right? Like every task has certain inputs and certain outputs. For plan business analysis approach, the input is a need. It all starts with a need. Okay, so there is no other input for planning, and outputs are who will perform the task, like a BA or whosoever it is, right? Like it can be a test analyst, it can be a developer. Who exactly is performing the a chain of activities, the timing, and the sequencing. Like I may be ready, like with whatever I'm doing in my head. I'm thinking, Jan, the project has started. Probably it's okay to give my deliverables by June, right? But probably that's needed in March, which would act as an input for someone else. Okay, so you need to know the dependencies and come up with a flow chart of activities and the dependence based on dependencies. Okay, so the timing and sequencing is really important. Those are the essential outputs of the first task. Okay, so when you make a sheet like this, you can actually relate each of the uh, task across. Like you're going horizontal. When you go horizontal in one particular task, you get an overview. You know the elements. Like I've just discussed each of the one task I've taken as a template and I've discussed, right? You'll have to do it with all the 30 tasks, and now logically it start making some sense. Okay, if you read the whole of webok, you may understand it, but you may not remember it. Okay, so understanding is different from memorizing. So this way you are logically connecting the dots, as well as there is a muscle memory. Like when you're writing this, somewhere you are remembering the names of the tasks. Okay, names of the elements, names of the guidelines. The reason why I said just take a paper and start writing down all the elements across all the tasks is there is a muscle memory, right? So like it worked well for me. I'm not sure if your memory power is much higher by looking at things. Like I have seen people, like their memory is fantastic. They just see a word and they print it in their mind, and when I ask to replicate, like yeah, they do it you know effortlessly. So if that's the take, very good. But usually, like I prefer to write down blindly and how much ever I can remember and compare it with my original cheat sheet and identify the delta. That took me 1 week to attain a proficiency of all the elements across all the 30 tasks. Okay, one initially I used to start with just one word element first. Like I'm just giving an example of the task, right? Like first task is plan business analysis approach. Say there are 6 elements there. So predictive or adaptive. So I used to write methodology. Okay, that's how I processed that in my head. Okay, I know when I say methodology, there are say 4 methodologies to me. Like I know 4 methodologies. One is predictive approach, second is adaptive, third is iterative, fourth is agile. Okay, so I'm not writing each of the words there. Okay, so initially I was just trying to short it down as much as I can, and as I progressed I tried correcting to an extent where I reached a place where okay, this is the word, exact word used in my book, and I started using the same word, nothing else, no other word, because they play with English there in the exam. Okay, so if the intent is just to clear the exam, rather it's better to remember it as is. Okay, so now I've discussed one whole task. This is all end to end, right? Like, like mostly nothing else beyond this is covered in each of the tasks: overview, purpose, elements, guidelines and tools, guidance, techniques, stakeholders, inputs and outputs. Okay, so the same thing you'll have to do it across all the 30 tasks and stakeholders, right? I'll also share this. It may sound dumb, but I have given a mental linking. Okay, so I've taken the first alphabet of each of the stakeholders, like domain subject matter expert for like for the first task has 4 roles: domain subject matter expert, project manager, sponsor, and regulator. So I've taken DSPR. Okay, so the first alphabets, right? And then the second task has all the 7 roles. So DSP, supplier, customer, end user. So SCE, like something like that. And I've given a mental linking across all the 30 tasks. Okay, when I say DSP, I think of music director. Okay, I'm not sure how many of you are aware of like if someone is from South Indian descent, they would know Devi Shri Prasad. Okay, so this is in my head. Okay, the reason I'm sharing this is you can think of anything. This is a memorization technique. Okay, I have gone to some memory training classes, and always remember it with a funny thing or whatever you find it entertaining when you, especially when you read something dry, very dry. Okay, I have tough time remembering names of people. So I was told by the memory trainer, think of a fruit or a vegetable that the person resembles, and in your head you are linking that name to, say, watermelon, right? Like, or a pumpkin. My face is for instance round. They try to like, I remember the name Vineet with pumpkin, right? So the next time I see him, somehow there is a mental linking, and I end up saying the right name. Okay, so the reason I'm saying this is a lot of memorization is needed. Okay, there is no other way that we can, or take a longer approach by repeating. Like, repetition is the mother of invention. So give it 6 months or more time, and you'll reach there. That's another approach. So give a mental linking, and things get much easier. Acronyms, right? Like, you just take out the first alphabet, or a chain. You make a chain of thoughts and frame a story within your head. Okay, you will have fun learning, and you'll be surprised. You will actually end up writing everything that's needed there. Makes sense? Like, so far I've been talking. I don't know the response and the pulse.
Yes, Vineet. For me, things are making a lot of sense. One question, Vineet, I have. So, the approach that you are suggesting, right? So, we are talking about the titles, right? All elements, input, type, output. So, I see them as titles, but there will be text associated with it, right? So, we were talking about techniques. So, techniques would have been explained in detail as well. So, how important is to go into the nitty gritties, because the approach that you are suggesting looks more like learning the titles but not going into the nitty gritties. How important do you think the nitty gritties are? Am I supposed to understand and learn and go into into each line of it, or studying or learning at the titles level, which of course itself is a big task, will help me clear out the exam?
Thanks, Shipra. So the reason why I'm saying titles initially is it all starts with titles. If we don't know, um, I'll give you an example. Someone is a new ACP or DCP holding, catering to a particular circle, right? Initially, they'll try to understand the names of the police stations in the territory. Okay, broadly, like, for instance, there are 4 zones, and then each zone has 10 police stations, and there are some names of CIs or SIs working there. So initially it all starts with the high level names, and once you know the high level names, you need not know what exactly is the case running in which, the major ones you would know. Okay, so is there anything which is pressing right now? Okay, those, that is different. But you will not get a hang of everything on day one. As you go, you will know everything, right? Like, 1 year down the line, you know all the everything that's there. So right now I'm at a phase where I'm trying to ask you to memorize the words as is, because in the exam they play with the names of these tasks and names of elements and names of guidelines and tools. Okay, so once you memorize this, then go back to Babok. To answer a question, you need not memorize line by line. Okay, then it is only you're seeing logically, is it making sense, and it is for your own justification. For instance, like you rightly mentioned, techniques is vast, right? Say risk analysis and management, or scope modeling, surveys and questionnaires. To me, um, interviews, surveys and questionnaires, a few techniques were sounding similar. Like, I was reviews, right? Reviews is one technique, and surveys and questionnaires is another technique. I used to get often confused between these two. How different is a review from a survey and questionnaire? Okay, like, what exactly is done in a review, which is different from doing a survey? Okay, and then interviews, right? So different interviews can be on paper or face to face or on paper also. Then how is it different from doing a questionnaire? Questionnaire is also an interview. right? So there is an overlap. When you go back there, each of the technique, you are not memorizing, you're trying to logically understand what it is, what exactly is it talking about. That's it. You need not remember at least I need not, I did not remember everything. Okay. And I managed to answer the questions reasonably, like uh, uh, because once I get a logic of what is being spoken about there at that level, I'm good to go. Okay.
Right.
Yes, I made some mistakes. Like there are some like 4 to 5 questions or so, I would say, which was pinpointing, right? Like you have to really, really read between the lines. I haven't reached that level of proficiency when I gave the exam, but eventually when I was referring to webhook time and again, that's when okay, this is stakeholder say engagement than stakeholder management. It's playing with words. I'm not going to that level of precision. Okay. Shipra, does is that
Yes.
uh, okay?
Yes, Vinit, makes sense.
Okay,
Thanks, Vinit.
sure.
Kirti
So,
seems to have a question.
Yeah. So, hi Vineet. I have a quick question. So, I've just started going through the techniques, and then I feel that some of the techniques are like very similar. Say, for example, glossary and concept model, right?
uh-huh,
And some of the techniques we have not even used. Like, say, for example, concept model is something that I have never used in my career, right? I know what a glossary is, but practically I don't know what a concept model is, right? It is talking about something like noun concept and verb concept and things like that. And then for some of the techniques, right, the practical differentiation is like very acute. If I
right.
look, if I go by the bookish language of Pebok, right, I will
Mm-hmm.
not be able to get a clear distinction between what a focus group and a workshop is,
Right, exactly.
right?
Yeah.
So if that is the case, like how do I differentiate? I mean, if I'm not able to differentiate these techniques properly, then it would actually go impact when I try to connect these techniques with with the tasks or the knowledge areas, right, Vineet?
Right, Karthik. So, as you rightly pointed, that thing has happened with me as well, right? So there is an overlap of things when you especially talk about techniques. It's really tough to like in solitude to identify. Okay, this is done in only this technique. It's not working that way. That's the fine difference you will have to you will have to reach. There is definitely a difference. That's the reason they have put under two different techniques. Concept model, yes, probably like not all the 50 techniques I have used to, like hardly I've used some 20 25 of them, not all of it, right? Like especially those decision analysis and the architecture related things, I haven't used it myself. Okay. But that's a new learning for you, right? One is new learning. Second, I used to go back to these two, like for the difference that you have identified, and try to read between the lines. And if I still don't get it, I used to go back to my mentor. Okay, explain what it is.
Mm.
Then he used to ask me to decode, like what was your interpretation, and then he tries to answer. Okay, your interpretation is wrong here, and this is what the Babok is trying to suggest. Okay, and you get to know only when you make a wrong answer, right? Like you travel with a thought and you mark an answer and that is wrong. That's when it pinches you that you know what, I think I'm wrong. I believe that I am right, right? So 100, you are confident that it is right, and then it proves out to be wrong. So now, like that was irritating me. Like I know that this is right, and why are they saying it is wrong? I need a justification. So that's where probably you may need help of a mentor, and that helped me there. Whoever you take PDUs with, probably it's a good idea to go back to them and try to highlight the subtle differences between these two techniques, right? Or you got a sense of what I'm trying to say? Like it is common, like
Yeah,
yeah.
got it. Yeah, thanks, Vineet.
Yeah, few of I have identified it myself, most of it, like I mentioned, questionnaires and interviews, right? Like I'm just giving a rough example. I have made a
Mm.
group of how can I collect feedback from customers. That's my agenda, right? I can do an interview, I can do a brainstorming, I can do surveys, I can do questionnaires. So I have grouped out of these 50 techniques. I tried grouping it. Okay, like
Okay.
uh, these five belong to one category. And now, out of these five, how is a survey different from questionnaire? Like, is it not a paper based when I'm doing a survey? Like, is it survey monkey that or digital, or is it verbal, or is it informal? Like, I may talk to someone and I get some feedback right over a coffee, and should I consider that as a feedback? Those are subtle, small subtle things that I tried processing within my head. Okay.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
there's no other way than going back and forth. Put in all your effort. If you exhaust, then only then go back to your mentor. Because if you figure it out yourself, that's the best
Mm-hmm.
thing, right?
Right.
You are more convinced. If someone else has say, like, even if my mentor told certain things, I was not convinced, because I
Okay.
truly believe that. Yeah. So, like, he like, and I left it there because my intent is to clear the exam than fighting with the book.
True.
So I stopped it there. I had to stop it there. Okay, so yeah,
Right.
going. Yeah, Shupra, you have something to say?
Yeah, even I have heard that when you are preparing for IIBA exam, don't try to apply your practical knowledge to it, and
Right,
don't try to see whether Babok is right or not. So
right.
I was telling Kirti, I was in one of the sessions where there were a lot of senior people. I was having 6 years of experience, but I was the most junior one there. So
Hmm.
there were a lot of senior people who are working in business analysis profile, and they were kind of threshing Babok like anything, like this is not correct, this is not practical, this is not the way it is supposed to be, right? So yeah, so it's again, I was like, whether it is really worth giving this exam at that point in time. But later on, a couple of other people have also told me that Babok is not practical in some ways, right? It's not like everything will apply to the T. So don't think of it as something that you will relate to it to your practical experiences, because every organization works in a different way, right? So it's something like Scrum, where Scrum has given you some guidelines, but not everyone is following the same to the T, right? So everyone has Scrum, but so similarly, Babok is giving you guidelines, but it's not practical to the T. And if you are giving and thinking of an exam, don't just go by what Babok says. Don't try to articulate whether it is right or wrong.
Right, Shupra. So, as I've been mentioning time and again, these two are two different things. And um, PMP, right? Like, when I gave PMP, interestingly, I found that PMP was pretty old, right? Like 50 years that has been there. And like, they have made some improvisations and they could not change the face of it. Like, at all times they had five phases of a project management life cycle, and they tried adding, deleting content or editing content, but they didn't change the very structure of it. So when I first read, I couldn't relate it completely. Like, okay, what is being practiced is very different. Why are they talking about this? Okay, at some points I found that, okay, this is something which is relevant to today. Okay, this sounds interesting. So literally, I'll tell you how I felt. There is a, say, you there is, you have a blazer, and you're trying to cover yourself from cold. um, Something has torn, right? Like, with time, it there is a wear and tear, right? Something has torn. You have put a small piece of cloth to patch it up. Okay, you're just covering yourself, so that there is no open, the coat is not open anywhere. Okay, and then there is another tear, you put another patch. Okay, so after 10 years, your whole blazer is full of patches. Okay, you are covered. I'm not sure if it's a okay, you are
Nice,
covered.
nice
um,
analogy.
uh, you are totally covered, right? You don't feel cold, but you look awkward and ugly,
Hmm.
right? So, and then that's the time to buy a new blazer. Okay, PMI has just done that. Last year, like from 2 years, they have been trying to change the face of knowledge areas, and the way they articulate and compartmentalize things. in different knowledge areas and tasks. They have just done it. They have like they have done away with the conventional model, and they have come up with some people, process, and business environment. So now talking about IIBA, so being relatively a new body, they have actually taken at that point in time whatever was in existence. This version is dated back to 2015, right? And I'm not saying business analysis has changed drastically in the last 7 years or after it has released, but it is an industry, like a generic industry guideline, I would say, because it's a global thing, right? Like business analysis only, to you as a business analyst, your journey may be different. Like I said, I could, after this, right? Like I could literally feel a person selling grocery also is a business analyst, because he is analyzing business needs. He is interacting with customers who are stakeholders. He's talking to suppliers, wholesale traders. He is making sure the inventory is managed appropriately. He's trying to make sure the cash flow is right. Okay, he's trying to break down. He has certain space, and he is calculating the rent, right? So like anyone who analyzes business needs is a business analyst, and you can't relate um, uh, uh, these guidelines to each and every business analyst role. Most of it is inclined towards, or there is a biasness towards IT side of things, because most of us are from that side of the world. But they have actually considered all these other generic roles as well, like a product manager role also has a business analysis element to it, right? So that is not at all IT.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
they tried taking those commonalities and try to add from their standpoint. Because if they read, if this is completely done from an IT standpoint, they will not be able to relate at all, right?
Right.
So that's the I personally found that that's the intent of making this Bebok in a particular way.
Hmm.
Okay.
Makes
Uh,
sense.
Yeah, and yeah, going back to the prep strategy, like I mentioned, after the cheat sheets, right? Like you basically you mug up all the cheat sheets when you have it in front of you. Elements, all the elements. I started writing inputs and outputs. I was confident. Okay, this goes as an input into this. I've made a flow chart of input, task, and an output, right? So need goes as an input into the first task, and what comes as an output is the approach and the timing and the sequencing. Okay, so a cheat sheet like this, like 12 cheat sheets I've put on a wall. Uh, to be very specific, six cheat sheets of one page each for one knowledge area I've put on one wall, and now I started walking the wall. Okay, the sheet that you're seeing on my profile picture, that's basically a one knowledge area, right? Like which has all the details, the names of the thing. Like I'm not saying in great detail, just the names, and try to remember the nouns as nouns, like an approach is an approach sort of a thing. And when you walk the wall, now it's easy to relate the dots. Like 1.3 is connected to 4.4. Now it's easy for me to go back and forth and refer. I have the Bebok on hand in case there is some confusion between two tasks or two techniques or two like roles of a stakeholders. Then I go back, I flag that and go back to that page and quickly read that. It just takes 5 minutes. Don't try to memorize those details. That is when your logic is coming. Okay, if he's saying this, it's a selective logic that you're using. Don't use your practical logic or like a common sense sort of a thing. Use your logic from Babok's standpoint. Okay, if he's saying that, that means okay, logically he is thinking like this. He or she, whoever is the author, is thinking like this. Try to step into their shoes and see. Okay, try to understand them. As simple as that. If they have written this, probably this could be the logic. Okay, whether it is convincing to me or not convincing to me, uh, I try not to put the temptation in at that point in time, only because I have a tight timeline and I really want that certification to get going, and I want a job upgrade or a job switch. So that's a bigger concern to me than fighting with Webok. Okay, so at that phase, like after two phases, right, like you're sitting the third phase, you walk the wall, and every day, like it used to take initially 1 hour to walk the wall. When I say walk the wall, these kind of sheets, 6 of them, like all the tasks and all the elements listed there, um, like at a glance, that made things really, really easy for me, I would say, because um, I'm not sure if you're okay with this approach, but after a tiresome work day also, I just hardly have 15 minutes. I used to walk the wall and just say, okay, morning I've studied this. Now, during the day also, I started processing things like, okay, value, how is a value different from a solution in the business analysis core concept model. So you get doubts. I used to write down in the notes, like on my phone, I used to write any questions or doubts that I have, or anything that I feel underconfident. When I go back home, I used to refer directly those, wherever because we are processing, right? Like remember we spoke about Bloom's taxonomy. Like initial phase of any learning is acquiring knowledge. You get information, you're getting knowledge, right? You're not essentially comprehending things. At the second level, you're trying to comprehend things, which happens passively, and it may not happen exactly when you are reading things, right? Like you're trying to memorize in the first phase, which is just knowledge or information. Second level, in your head, you're trying to comprehend things. In the third level, you try to apply. Okay, so CBAP is checking your knowledge at a application level, not at a knowledge level. There are no direct questions. Who, which stakeholders? There are direct questions. Okay, I'm not saying not at all, but intent of the exam is to check your application rather than knowledge. Okay, so with that, the third phase, try to then refer to Babok, go back and forth. In the second and third phase, it depends on how fast a learner you are and how fast can you dedicate your work to, memorize the elements and tasks. First level is task, like I mentioned, 6 knowledge areas, 30 tasks, and just the names of the tasks and the elements, right? The next is elements, and then try to go back to techniques. It's really tough to again group techniques. That's what I have done. Group techniques in its commonality, like surveys, interviews, questionnaires, brainstorming, all those are one set. Anything related to user stories or mapping or decision analysis, decision tree, those kind of things I have made a set. Okay, so like that actually helped me to group things, and grouping actually, uh, initially I used to get confused between two names, but when you group, you try to go into details and read through the technique. So I would recommend to read each and every technique description in the babok. Okay, don't try to memorize again, but try to write a gist of whatever you understood from the technique for all the 50 techniques. Okay, in the same grouping perspective, in one page probably you're writing five techniques which are similar, right? And I think towards the end of the third cycle, you are reasonably confident, and you're stepping into the fourth cycle where you try to take exams, and you're trying to finally uh, refine whatever you have learned already. Okay, so you're almost there, but you're scoring say 60%, and your target is to reach say 80% or 90% in the exam. So now you're going back and forth. Now it's like people, right? Like the content is like a person, someone who is being introduced for the first time. You find everything is new, and as you progress, you are familiar with that person. Same way you get familiar with Babok by then, Babok and the content. You're traveling with those words. Okay, and in the fourth phase you are more confident than second and third phases. Okay, I'm sure there are still shortcomings. If you have to reschedule the exam, like I have done some reschedules for, so they give you before 5 days of the exam you can reschedule if it's an online exam. Offline, I'm not sure. I've given it online. So, like there was some dependency that came in the office, and I have rescheduled it twice. Okay, so yeah, so there is always a chance of reschedule 1 week before the exam also, but don't take this as a uh, uh, a moving target. Try freezing the exam date. If you have decided on a date, try giving it on that date and travel towards the date. If you know that the date can be a moving target, uh, I have seen people from 1 year, every 15 days they keep postponing the exam and they never gave the exam at all. Okay, so fourth phase, you're giving exams essentially, and uh, yeah, so referring back to the BEBA, going back and forth, and try to improvise your score till the time you feel confident. If 1 week before the exam you are still at 50%, 60%, you are not. Even one day before the exam, I was not feeling very confident. I know I was not memorizing everything. Oh, I don't know this. Oh, I don't remember this. But there were things which I know also. I know all the elements by heart. When I say by heart, I didn't mug it up the typical mugging up. When I write, there was a muscle memory, and then I'm processing some logic within my head. Okay, it makes sense to identify. Doesn't it make sense to identify what methodology are we taking in plan business analysis approach? Yes, it does. Right. So logically, it makes sense. So I was convinced when I was doing it. If it makes sense, please take that approach. And yeah, the D day before the exam, again, in the if it is good to do a brain dump before the exam, right? Like before the exam starts, when you book the slot, it's a 3.5 hour exam, and you are supposed to log in for half an hour before. And like initially, they'll see the system compatibility check and all those things. You go with I have carried two white pieces of paper, and I've put the like I tried putting it up, putting a brain dump before the start of the exam so that it doesn't cannibalize on your exam, right? Exam time. um, the invigilator, like whoever was watching me, did not permit me to do that. They said wait till the timer starts. Okay, and when I clicked start, there is a temptation to see the first question or whatever is shown upon the screen. But brain dump was really important for me, because when you are, especially they're trying to drain your brain during the exam, right? So you're traveling with a particular thought. Say, every question is a different scenario. It's like cities, right? Like across the globe. The whole webok is like a globe, and they're trying to take your mind from, say, Australia to New Zealand, New Zealand to India, India to China. Okay, so when they're trying to flip between these, you still have a inertia to stay in that previous place. Okay, so brain dump is really important before the exam, because it's easy to flip countries, or like in the analogy it is countries, but it's easy to refer to that guide and flip your thought rather than holding on to the previous thought, because the thought process is intense. It's not like very superficial, right? Or if someone can actually manage the temptation, like, it's really good. I could not manage that. When I'm traveling with that thought, I carry that thought. Even when I'm reading the next question, I still have that. I'm still in that inertia, right? So this is a brain dump helped me do that, like coming out of the previous thought and flipping to the next one. Okay, and I was also noting down similar, like 120 questions, right? Like first 40 questions were really tough. Like I thought, like I cannot skip, right? Like I thought I cannot skip, but there is an option to go back and forth. Like you can always go to question 30 or 40, whichever question you want. So I have done that mistake of taking first question onwards, and like initially I was thinking 3.5 hours, 120 questions is easy. Like every question I have roughly about 3 minutes, more than 3 minutes, right? Like hardly I would take 1 minute to finish a question. But first 40 questions, believe me, are very draining. They give one case study. Like I would say first 40 questions were like, probably the order might change, but think about this pattern. They give a case study, a long case study, and then there are three questions or four questions or five questions based on that case study alone. Like they don't tweak the case study completely. The question that they ask is different. They give a scenario. You give a scenario like say Jason is a senior business on the team, and he's traveling with a requirement gathering, and he initially validated requirements, and then he has put it across for verification to a board like EPMO board or something, and he's waiting for an approval. What is the next step? The options are listed below. Now conduct a brainstorming session. Now socialize with the sponsors and inform about the updates. All of the answers might sound right, okay, but when you read the Babok, which is a Bible, Bible speaks certain things, and you just have to blindly go by that Bible. Okay, so you get a sense there. And the second, like the same case study for the next question also, left side of the screen there is a case study, and right side of the screen there are options. Okay, like there was some entity relationship diagram which was taking a toll. Like on one screen I couldn't see all the options at one shot because it was an online exam, right? Even if it is offline, right? Like you are essentially looking at a offline, meaning that it's not a paper based exam. So you go to a test center, and in person you give you're looking at a computer screen. It's really tough to put an entity relationship diagram. Like every option was an entity relationship diagram, and there is a stick man, there is an end user customer. So I ended up drawing it on the paper, and try to relate things. So initially I thought it is waste of time to put it on a paper. Instead I'll try to read, but it made sense for me to quickly put it on the paper and compare things. Okay, and another thing is, out of these 40 questions, right, I would say there are 10 case studies and there are 40 questions based on that. Most of it, each of the case study had 4 questions, some had three, some had five also. Okay, so those questions were uh, data, like when I have before my MBA, I had some data interpretation in my competitive exams, like how do you interpret data, right? So somewhere I found that is not even relevant to Babok or business analysis, but you need to do some kind of math there. Okay, so it is taking so much time, and some kind of calculations based on data interpretation. Okay, just be mindful about those kind of questions when you take watermark learning exams. I have seen similar exam patterns put up there. So be prepared mentally. Like I'm going with a theory, like kind of a content, and suddenly when they asked me to calculate things, I was finding it strange. Okay, so just make a note of it, and try to. There is a calculator. I think you can carry a non-mathematical calculator, the advanced calculator. You can carry a basic one, but there is a on the screen there is a calculator. So it's really tough to type numbers and do the calculations. So you might as well check beforehand if you can carry a hand calculator, which is a small one, but it's much easier. Okay, saving time, because on the same screen, if you have to take the numbers, and on the screen itself there is a calculator, it takes time to type in numbers there. Okay, these are small details which are time killers, right? So just be mindful about those small details. From the 41st question, it was the question.